Hello, Space family. This is Donna Jo Thorndale, your editor-in-chief here at space.com. And I am so excited to welcome you all to the February 2023 Illuminate Conversation interview for this download. We are so lucky to be in conversation with Alison Miller, PhD in clinical psychology. Alison, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm truly grateful to be here.
Well, we are so excited. Our friend and founder, Nicholas Prattley, is, of course, a big fan of yours, and you all work together personally. Many people in our space community know of you and your work, but for those who don't, would you mind to give us a brief introduction to who you are and what you do with your life's path, with your work, and then we'll jump into our interview questions.
Thanks, Donna Jo. I am an academic entrepreneur in many ways at heart and have had an interesting path. I've been in business about 23 years. And the first 20 of them, I ran a company, coaching consulting company, the Dissertation Coach, that primarily helps graduate students get doctoral degrees, PhDs for the most part. And then when the pandemic began, I ended up opening an entirely new business early in the pandemic that is a coworking community for academic writers, but it's this conversation about productivity in a lot of ways. And it's ended up being a life-altering experience because a whole new world of understanding for me has arisen about how really the desire to be productive can actually be a deeply healing desire because it can take you on a remarkable spiritual journey while you're actually getting stuff done.
Well, that I feel like, Alison, thank you for that introduction. And that's a perfect segue into our conversation because in our world today, I think the word productivity can be so loaded and it can feel so much like we have to produce and, put out and show up and, hit the numbers and hit the marks and, deliver at work or what have you. But I know that you have an interesting take on this intersection between self-talk and self-regulation and self-care and what it means to sort of reframe being productive. Would you speak or tell us a little more about what those intersections are in your world and how you approach that?
Well, I think that most of us have sort of developed a relationship and a sort of our own personal definition of productivity based on what's been imported into us by the culture. Your teacher decided how much work you needed to do, how much homework there was, and what tests there were. And then you're in your job, other people have decided what makes you a productive worker. And I think that it really has done great harm to human beings to have an imported sort of foreign version that's not organic to us. And so I believe that productivity needs a fundamental reframing. One of them is more from the outside in, where we start to say, wait a minute, I want to author my own personal definition of what it means for me to be productive, as opposed to I'm productive based on what is imposed on me by the outside world. That's a fundamental paradigm shift for a human being that orients us to another really important reframing, which is all of us have the birthright to be able to work in ways, whatever work it is that we do, whatever that is, paid or unpaid, whatever it could be, anything. That work that we do, we have a birthright to be able to work in a way that really, really works for us, where we are reliably able to produce results with, we show up resistant, but we have an idea, an instinct of ways we can work with ourselves, and we know how to get back into work. We know how to show up and do what we plan to do, and we know how to create a plan that's actually humane for a human to do. That's part of it. And working in a way that works isn't just about the output, the results, the crossing things off your to-do list. Working in a way that works means it works. Like it works for you. Like in your body is like, yes, I work and I'm focused and I get things done. And sometimes I work hard. And you know what? I sleep and I eat real food and I regulate my nervous system, that self-care, and being able to regulate your nervous system, that's not something you do after work or before work alone. It's not separate from our work. It actually needs to be weaved into our work. And when we have an externally imported definition of productivity, then we're not attuned to that our body is actually constantly telling us whether the way that we are working is working or not working. And so a journey of this kind of reframing of like, wait a minute, I want to author. How do I author? I author because I learn to come down inside myself. I learn how to, first of all, drop my eyes inside. And let me tell you the last piece of this reframing, and this is really important. There's always a version of us who shows up, and we're learning in our co-working community. I think one of the key things, the core practices, is learning to drop our eyes, our attention, our awareness softly, gently, compassionately inside, dropping down, which is, that's not easy to do because there's a lot of stuff to feel that is not fun to feel. But we do need to learn how to drop down in ourselves so that we can know who's here. Who am I operating? What version of me has shown up? If I don't know who's here, my ability to produce results becomes greatly limited because I don't know what version of me I'm at the helm of.
And so if I may ask you, Alison, so in this line of sort of personal self-inquiry, how do I drop into myself? How do I bring I love that you say drop your eyes inside. How do I bring my attention? Is it based in a body scan? Is it based in me sort of checking in with how I'm physically feeling? Is it somatic dropping in? What does checking in with oneself look like?
Yeah.
Because I know in my own life, I'll create wildly ambitious, day plans, my laundry list of things to do is so ambitious. And then I recognize I'm only able to do 1 or 2 things on a list when I had 6 things on there. And that wasn't a humane list. Yeah. How does one go about doing that sort of check?
It's such a good question. And there are, of course, endless pathways to this. That is, you're directing me right to, which is sort of the last piece of this reframing I'm talking about. And I think this is at the heart of authoring our own definition of productivity and authoring our own pathway of working in a way that reliably produces results and that also honors our humanity. It honors our birthright to have relational well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being. Like we're working in a way that's sustainable over time for a human, like a bone, organ, flesh, blood pumping through its veins. Really, like we're still also part animal in a way, right? Like a human with a very vulnerable nervous system in it, that we're doing that, right? So what happens is you make a plan, you make this grand plan, as I love to say, we're all very skilled at planning for the cartoon version of ourselves. Here's what happens though. You made this grand plan. It was like pure snow. You felt great about it on Sunday. This is beautiful snow. Well, the next morning, dogs start walking through it and peeing in it, and people are stomping on it. It gets slushy. Reality collides with your plan, and the version of you who shows up may or may not, in a sense, on a continuum, be compatible with the plan that you made. And so I like to think of this as a spectrum. It's not compatible or incompatible. It's at any given moment, the version of me who's shown up. Let's say I'm going to be, working on sort of a marketing plan or something. And the version of me shows up is feeling like not that confident in my ability to do a marketing plan. And so now I'm kind of resistant and I'm a little bit irritable, or I didn't sleep well, or I had an argument with my spouse or my significant other and it's still in my body the next morning. Like the version of me who's shown up isn't actually compatible with the plan I made. So now, instead of being in a conversation about, oh, I'm struggling with my productivity, what's wrong with me? I'm not smart enough, competent enough, good enough. There's not enoughness. That's actually not what's going on. When we're not working in a way that's working, what's happening is the version of us who's showing up, welcome whoever it is, because that's part of the continuum, how you currently show up. if you show up resistant, if you show up irritable, that's probably not that compatible with what you said you were going to do. That's really good to know. This is like a really good news for everybody listening to this. You don't have to fix yourself. You're not broken. You have an opportunity, moment to moment, day to day, to drop your eyes inside and ask yourself, am I compatible with this plan? Am I compatible with my next to do? Is the version of me who showed up and the work, are they, how compatible on a continuum or incompatible are they? If they're not compatible, then you can put your hand on one lever, which is, what can I do to regulate my nervous system, soothe myself, activate myself, get myself more compatible with working? What can I do on the internal side? And then what can I do on the external side? Maybe I actually am not compatible with doing this at all, and I'm going to actually do something else, or I could break it down in different pieces, or I could ask for help. There's something you can do so that you would never put yourself in a position, if you want to work in a way that works, where you would move into work that you're not compatible with doing. You make the necessary adjustments, and we make those adjustments moment to moment, hour by hour. And then we're able to do something essential, which to feel like I can actually self-govern. When difficulties arise, you know what I do? I drop in, I check compatibility, I make adjustments, and I work with myself in that moment. And I do not judge myself for struggling. I do not judge myself for having procrastinated all week. I just go, it's a new moment, and how can I help myself be compatible now? I haven't been able to get that compatibility the last few days. Keep trying, because at some point you will. And then you'll be back into the work. And over time, when you practice that and you practice it and you practice it, you start to trust that you actually can go inside yourself, get your hands on the levers, and govern, lead from inside out into the world. And that's how you are productive. You're productive through leadership from inside, authoring your own way, not being productive according to what has been imported like malware or a virus into your system.
Alison, that is such a compassionate, I mean, it's so simple, and yet I feel like it's so radical. It's such a radically compassionate way to approach how we manage and lead our lives, and specifically our relationship to working in the world, whether your work is academic work, or whether your work is running your household or supporting your family, or if you're an entrepreneur, if your work is out in the business world or in a nonprofit sector, in the arts sector, whatever arena it is that we're working in, right? I just love the compassion that is such a gentle and intelligent way to approach this journey of living a life. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else? I would certainly hope that you could come back again and talk with us a little more about this self-governance idea, but do you want to leave us with any final thought about that, or about this self-talk or self-care, or how we tend to the us that has shown up on any given day?
Well, I think it's really important as a core practice for us as humans is to be kind to what we find. Learn to soften around the reality we find ourselves in, no matter what it is. It is really my sort of word of the year: soften. Soften. Can we soften, right? Kind of thawing myself out slowly over time in a way that's humane. I want to point something out that's really important. This entire conversation we just had also has an immediate relational parallel. That if you're listening to this is another thing you can practice that will make a huge difference in your relationships. These are things I wish we started teaching in kindergarten. Number one is that we as human beings move in and out of compatibility with healthy relating with other human beings, where we're able to relate in a way where we self-govern, we're able to respond. We're in charge of our own energy. And if someone else has crappy energy, we realize that's them and we protect ourselves from it. We might set boundaries. We might remove ourselves. We might engage in an energy that leads them into an energy that's in a direction of us, right? But what happens to us a lot of times is we try to talk through problems and work things out when we're actually not compatible with that conversation. So paying attention to that. And the second thing is
that I was just
yeah,
going to say that feels like a real losing battle, because how many of us have stayed at workplaces or in relationships or what have you, stuck in patterns that we know aren't right for us. We know we're not compatible. And it's like we're going to somehow harden and muscle through it.
yeah,
When there's that great deep wisdom of softening and really being in more of a flow state. It's
absolutely.
a bit like what you're saying. I didn't mean to cut you off. So
No. It's so good. And then, the thing is that our work needs something from us. And so do our relationships, which is to get to spend more time with us. We're in a more regulated nervous system state.
Yes.
The people around us want to be with us when we're more relaxed and at ease and more grounded. Sure. And our work also wants that from us as well.
Wow, Alison, that is what a great note to sort of wrap on for this conversation. I feel like this is really such a great, a new way to start this new year in this mode of being compassionate to self, softening around self, and reframing and redefining. I love the way you said we get to author our own definition of what it is to have productivity in our own lives. That is supreme ownership. I just love that. I hope that you will consider coming back and talking with us a little more about that concept of dropping inside, getting our hands on the levers of what it is that we can do to have a masterful self-governance.
Be a pleasure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much. We certainly appreciate you being with us for this conversation.
Thank you.